Couch. Poems inspired by reading W.B. Yeats in the Freud Museum, Vienna. Michael Tim McGee, summer 2012. Dedicated to John Osborne, my brother. Missing string. I never could square with rejecting a garment just 'cause it was missing a little string. Didn't seem theologically sound by any of the principles of the church fathers. I figured Augustine would agree. Man, like a garment, starts out whole until there is a hole. But the whole does not mean that the garment or the man is no longer whole. It just proves that he has a whole lot of work still left to be done, and I figure a well-used garment is the same. Still, work left to be done in it. Some find need to make repairs to cover the obscenity, but I always took up with the caucus that spoke against the action. To call attention to the defect in the attempt to remediate seemed less than an act of love, a kind of zenner-than-thou attitude I find hard anymore to abide. So I reckon the good Lord is going to have to leave me unpatched. Hate on. Beside this creek of polished stone, a fragile trout alone expires. She army crawls through weeds of reeds to skim a brook of watery fire. Hate on again the thought of loss, embrace the gasping torrent tossed. Love unrepining hours anew, to hum the hymn we knew, we knew. Wasted hands. Spring glances down at ragged nails eaten to the quick, wasted hands worn rough with burning sun and lengthened days of expectation. Moist tongue dries to parching winds, and the last spit of rain chokes the closing throat of forgotten straw man spring self. Late for Augustine. When I stumble and fall into that final bed of resting, when I raise weary eyes towards that dark night of sky and soul, when my digits fidget nervously the septic sheets of a foreign couch waiting to be vacated for the next weary traveler, when I feel the rise and fall of my breast and my throat tightens with the song wanting to burst forth, when my limbs ache for separation from the pain that makes them twitch with fatigue, when all this and more brings my days to a close, your face will remind me this is the most mundane of experiences to befall a breathing creature, since it was you who taught me how to read and hope. Crack. I know as much of trees as pain when roots of rain spread wide arms through black soil. The journey of this oak began in some forgotten hollow of a hand that held the acorn still unsure. To fell a forest takes an axe whose handle's made of that same woody vein of wood. Our wisdom comes in moment's glance before the first crack of falling tree, when the throat clears a path to scream, she would be free. Then what remains is a stump of love, left but as a memory of the shade that was. Sometimes. I too sometimes wish for an isle off some coast where bees are not too loud, and my deep heart's core can hear the soft hum of a song I heard at birth or before, ages of cleft rock, where hiding is accepted. To go alone is at times what seems most right, and once there I will be reminded that this is the way I held on through all the isolation and pain of forced departure, forced breath to recall. There is only this, and then this, and then this. Kissed. For my father, 31 December 2011, Indonesia. Beneath this dirt outside Bandung, there now are boards above your face. The voice I once knew how to fear, so silent in this place of grace. Your piercing eyes and violent hands are now released of all their rage, and pain kissed softly lashed your lips that once proclaimed Allah is great. Alone I sit while there you lay. I strive to build a cross of wood, erected high above your bed of tar-black soil, and still I would seek a song to sing of days spent in equatorial fire where Christ and prophet kissed. They rest together side by side, just like your weary feet. Stumble. Today I saw my father, dead, his pale blue body looking adolescent, a prepubescent to death. His hands were what I wanted to ignore but could not, seeming to play unmindfully with each other. An aged man is only paltry until the last gasp, and I mused on the quality of spit necessary to be free of the transfiguring attraction of time's crooked index finger pointing straight at you or me. Today I saw an image of a form that now rests, and my sadness was for not me alone, but for the anger that I so long ago hugged and let stumble out the open door of my heart. Couch. Freud's final thoughts. The last thing packed as I ready to leave was my couch of soft fire. The years had rested and then fled while that couch stood still and waited for the trip to London. Now, hours from death, mine own or others, I cannot help but find a passage running through and through my half-empty mind. He saved others, himself he could not save. In spite of all the work to prepare, I find that dying somewhere else is not what I thought it would be. I rest now on my restless couch, spread my arms to the jeering crowd who is sure a king is just like other men, lost and confused. I strive to remember the smell of soft rain falling on an empty Vienna avenue beside a bakery, alone. Glance. Reflections from Freud's study, Bergazi 19. Out the window is a view of the street you walked, slow, pondering the meaning of ideas yet to be accepted or understood. A soft breeze finds its way to bring the scent of old into this room where you paced, cigar in hand, dying of the longing to live. To enter this space is to enter your work, sadly reduced to sex and violence, but neither tells the story of what you loved, what you released. We love what we hug in our sitting room of pain. Did you stumble only once the last time you walked your stairs out into the misty rain of broken stone street where you glanced back one last rhyme of time? Fire for Anna Freud. She climbs the stair of memory to recall why she loves the smell of books. Worn spines, musty gaze from lids of shelf half open to the dimming light where dust plays games of chase before resting on this reading room's stone-paved map of tiles. The fury of a woman's broken life is carried in the rough page of a scroll, then put upon a case to rot, forgotten or half forgot. But soon a child crawls upward on the stair and reaches for a wrinkled, half-remembered sigh. She brings it down with simple care, the pages that required a war of thought. Her eyes chase words unknown. A glance of joy graces her page of face. She once was child who, once a child, sat in this very place and waited for the echo of a spark sent up by newly started pyre of fire. Janitor, musing on the passing of my father while sitting in the State Hall reading room, Vienna, and wondering who cleans this tile of floor. Before my old man limped away, he taught me how to smell a book, to hold a man inside my palm a fist. The covers open, a slow creak of words flow over stones smoothed by the poet's searching finger heart. The quiet of this space reminds me of my father's face, which held a storied vault of rage made quiet by the foolish hands of rhyme. The poet is a janitor of sorts. Fetching a hammer or a splintered broom, he makes the journey from his bookroom life while humming hymns of wretched angel strife. Sigh. Dragonfly sky of windless sigh reminds me what it means to ask why faith in deity is necessary to the proud act of love. You state you doubt a God of hell, and I reply it does not interest me. Do you still hold to seek out love? You tell me yes, and I say bless this moment with a certain reasoned sigh. If you believe in love, then you believe in God. But don't tell me what you believe in, rather tell me what you use. The only God that matters is the God you use. If you use love to answer this dark night of fight and fright, then you use God enough to make it worth your power and might. Nothing more need be said in this dragonfly sky of windless sighs. London. Lace lays at the end of this sleeve of town, unrecognizable by the lack of tailor to mend the rend of string which holds in place a button heart of hope. This garment town, like boats and dreams, must find their exit from the harbor of ripped seams. Turning. He sought someone or thing to blame, and the wind seemed as good as any. So he chased the wind the way he chased her heart down cobbled stone streets of pain and the start of joys. I never thought you would change, he said, and his eyes fell to notice his fingers playing with a thread pulled nearly loose. She whispered soft, then it was never love, because change is like God, and to scream at love for being what it must be, is to accuse love or change or God of a sin both it and they and we cannot commit, at least willingly. He stood and turned to leave, but he knew he had forgotten the door of entry. She silently pointed to the exit, and he stepped away, but then stopped short, and turning, but he did, for my brother John while in Vienna, 13 June 2012. It pains me in ways translinguistic that either I or you will someday stand beside a mouth of empty soil and say goodbye to the mind he held most sacred. Knowing that moment will soon interrupt our joyful, joy-filled Odyssey chorus makes this stanza of awareness that much more harmonious. There is only one other who I wish to stand beside me as I am lowered into that wound of earth, and you are he. If I remain standing and you catch the final train of honest exit first, know that I will proclaim our mutual vision hymn of joy, hope, and peace to those weeping and still asking how one such as you could have ever even sung his verse so well. And I will smile through tears and hum, but he did. Pulpit. For my father, Muhammad John Patrick McGee, 14 June 2012. Last evening, in the oldest church in Vienna, I told you goodbye by lighting a candle and cursing your name in love one last time. The final image taken of your naked torso still fresh in my mind, I wondered if you heard the songs of the Taizé service, the still breathing of that God-filled space. And I thought how you would have approved that I left you where I found you, among musty smells of pews and a pulpit. I left as the final song was being sent up. I had had enough of hymns, and I knew they had enough of me. Songs and prayers work on the heart the way a whip works on a slave to sin, who beats himself with leather strap so he can be free of the fear of sin's enjoyment. Trembling. The only thing I know of casting is to quote, "Cast your bread upon the waters." The humor is, there is no humor. He says, "Stand still and focus on the center of the pool and wait. What must appear will. And then you cast from this vantage point. But hold your rod tight or it won't be yours for long." I watch his shoulders, weighted with years of casting, move away. Silent here, now, save for busy work of fowl, while below the sound of a pool fills and empties. Then there it is, a small brookie, or so it seems, thinking only to snag one to redirect the party's laughter away from the poet, the fly lying innocent-like on the epidermis of stream pool. The telescoping power of rainbow submerge in reverse, and the inch-long becomes a 10-pound fighter, jerking the line and nearly the pole loose from trembling hands. Poetics. Well-metered lines of unhatched corn, flat or rolling, empty cigarette butts of grain ears stick out ashtray soil next to grove of oak that found roots a century or more ago. Stanza of windshield blue clear sky helps the cadence of clouds find a calm rest. In rhymes of wild daisies sprinkle lonely ditches, while simile of sunray warms a back or face, a body lithe and young. That sonnet tank of near still water will soon provide couplet relief. Grading. Finals day at Venn University, 1937. From his study he observes two lovers side by side, whisper, laugh, look away, while throng of busts around that lawn of University Yard stands silent, glancing. He steps once back to avoid discovery. Shadows start to play chase between columns of ancient splendor. They roll over once, tangled in scattered soft curls, smell of sweet breath. Somewhere the song of sparrow, late evening. He shuffles, the echo of marble stairs, past the library, one final glance into the yard, now vacant and darkening, as rain begins. Smile. The salt water of the Straits of Malacca stained my child's nose. After a sunburnt day of play in the surf, I'd pull myself to bed and wait for the next sun to appear. Taking in a long draught of Malaysian air, I then would stretch to the new sun and run with child's legs into the bright sand and dive again with joy into those waters that had touched other coasts I wish I could drift to on my back, kissing an empty blue sky filled with gulls, dipping for the next meal of fish. Sometimes I still can smell the salt of Malacca, and I smile a smile. After all the falls from tipping bike, training wheels recently removed have left knees bloodied and bruised. After hard words when son enters bedroom door hours later than he promised before, when the night smelled of hope-filled promise. After the long hug reminds him that school can only hold a daughter's youth so long, and then a letting go must happen again, like the day he said goodbye through yellow school bus window the first time. After trembling shoulders heave against the sigh of pain, when choices must be accepted and both must learn to love and sing again. Arguing the call. They let him bring only one of his old Prince rackets with him to let stand in the corner or hang upon the wall if a nail in the newly furnished room was allowed. But when his walker was brought in with the new Wilson balls, he screamed the way he had at blind linesman, that he would only walk with pin balls on the end of his walker feet. They said they didn't understand. One tennis ball was just as good as... He silenced them with a grim stare and reduced a history of grand slams to a moment's glance. After hours of spilled words, he won. Could there have been a different outcome? He nodded affectionately as he labored to limp down the long hall, edging towards center court. Two-a-days. Abilene, early morning, late August practice before my junior year. I learned to count on smells to remind me where I was. Pads made sour from years of use, now mine, still foreign objects so early in the season. My helmet fit almost too snug, my vision somehow slightly blinded by the gray cage. Am I handsome enough in this headgear? Then the new mode grass. Hundreds of blades at a time, clutching palms and face, when the coach's whistle reported my body had to return again and again to the floor. I tried to tell myself I had chosen this, but I could still smell the distant coolness of my quiet sheets calling for my response out of soft darkness. Bruise. The small blue circle on your left forearm bore evidence of the work to enter your alabaster epidermis, organized effort to restore your youth, one final struggle between religion and science. A man's biography is contained in the bruises he learns to live alongside. I imagine the fight that took place as novitiate nurse followed protocol and wished you would hold more still, but it was not a part of the science of your nature to ever hold still. The myths of your life were always underscored with the blue and purple finger paint dots of collision and contusion, and in the end, science won the loss. Turning 50. That moment in the live version of Miles Davis's Funny Valentine, when he grows fatigued with all those incense-like notes, pausing, leaving the audience to applaud his half-unfinished work of lonely tune-making. One's life is a work of not so much art, but art-filled faith. You blow for a while till your lips need a good rub and your tongue needs a sip of spirits. You pause. And from somewhere near the back of the club you can't even recall entering, one pair of hands decides to make it official. You look up and out past tables at the front where the lovers whispers about what happens next. And for this moment, you know that you are not playing solo. Soar. I want to ask him how it feels to strike out on an unknown ledge, to not look down but take a step, follow some vague trail to climb while taking in an azure sky empty of hawk and cloud and sun. I wonder if my skin is all that now begins its long slouch home to mingle with the dirt I've learned to accept askance. The key to hiking is to look not back but only up and forward. What trail still lies behind is lost in dusty memory when on a stump of boulder I sat and tried not to spill even a drop of moisture. But morning climb has now turned noon, slow hike or drag. Yet through those trees just up ahead I spy a monument of granite unseen before, while sudden hawk aveers. The soar will soar. Poet-slave sonnet. If scratching a poem don't make me a poet, does hacking a slave's job make me a slave to empty lost beauty, so I can someday rave in forgotten anthology horny freshmen hope they get a good price for at sellback time? Some master sits behind Manhattan mind, corralled by awful offerings soon to be denied as not up to standards she no longer can define the origins of. If she gets to decide a slave's offal of scratched lines left in soft sand by poet's finger, terrible, honest wave reminds the poet. To linger is to be forgotten, if not forgiven, by ennuy's awe. I'll soon bow to the office of the poet's slave. I saved others. Myself I could not save. Religion. Why must she seem a hawk, with open claws and sharp bloodied beak, waiting to devour virgin lamb heart and eager mind, playing in flowery field where brook flows thoughtfully silent? Wisdom is no gloomy bird of prey, but a richly splattered monarch whose hard work of leaving the warm cocoon prepared him or her for the tutorial now delivered while effortlessly writing stanzas in the morning ray of sun. Soft butterfly is a bird of prey. Artifacts. From Freud's cluttered desk, the window he stares out onto the courtyard filled with timid sun. He waits for the next line, the way he waits for the next patient, ankle bones and wrist bones crossed, the air still with the quiet of anxiety. Out in the courtyard, the sound of children's feet on the symmetrical stone, and the gardener keeps to watering flowers, the one thing he knows to do well. He is being watched, maybe or not, from the second-floor window that houses the room of strange artifacts that tells of journeys, real or imagined, to distant lands. Some say those trinkets are haunted, but maybe really only possessed of a certain charm that tells both old men that children's feet playing are all that's needed for the next line or next patient. Fade. Life's slouching stairs climbed silently, suddenly begin to creak, squeak, and the pause midway up or down explains why a mirror appears a foreign object for the first time. The eyes, or flesh close to them, hold less mystery, or more. Hair, once groomed for hours, is now complete in less. The voice's change is noticed more in others. It usually lowers, seems to strain to sound restrained, lost of that youth-filled training when an open mouth emitted strong song. Hands or fingers, maybe more, start to look like objects of distress. Terrace ascension of beauty's grace must soon fade. Surgery. When I whispered to his raspy breathing that his time was done, there was nothing else medicinally to be won. I asked him if there was anything I could do to ease his pain. He looked past heavy lids to the tree out his lone window, bathed in soft rain, and he smiled, "Take me to Hazelable Park." I sought to convince the old poet he was speaking in metaphor, but he was adamant. I wheeled him to the white van that he mused smelt of spilt milk, and then 3 blocks away to Abel, where he reported he had swung his 3 children epochs ago. "Don't bump your head on the clouds," he said, smiling. He slouched in his seat, listening to the hum of the heater and the soft panting of raindrops brushed away by wipers, gathering his breath, ignoring his doctor. I suggested he not open the door. I suggested he not take that step to the sidewalk and through the black iron gate, but I would not hold him from the bank of 3 swings as his bruised right hand with the Scooby-Doo Band-Aid grasped the chain and he chuckled, "Push me." Twig. Keats arrived late while I was reading Yeats beside Mountain Lake, ring grove of aspen standing sentry, distant cloud dispensed tears of deliberate happiness. Keats approved this space, the answer to the rise and fall of ripening breast to swell forever in a sweet unrest or else to swoon. His small hand picked up a broken finger of fragile twig, tossed it into my fire, watched flames write unmeasured sonnet lines for an hour. When kneeling was enough for weak knees, he stood and maybe groaned, gestured to Meadowlark Lake far below and said, "There's a boat down on the lake." Then his back was swallowed by early summer foliage and cricket feet. Sacrament. Slouching pines drink up soft wind and belch a sound of lonely freeway. Hunched, ragged granite shoulders shrug off last wool scarf of soiled snow. Insects and fowl imitate each other's endorsement of new music morning. A crow of raven demands certain proof I am not the interloper he knows me to be. Ground squirrel avoids eye contact with circling hawk, who awaits my departure before inflicting his certain brand of torture. Shiny trout start their morning's ritual of genuflecting and kissing the holy sacrament of sun's arms held aloft. Glory. His mother whispers in his ear, "You are the one," and he yearns to direct, to expect obedience. Soon he learns that adoration is not always or often love, but a dark dread that obsequy will be discovered as frowning glory. He ages with little peace in the idea of oblivion, so to his mother he returns under the appellation of love. He awaits some moment when those ancient whisper voices recede into vast ocean of empty memories. Skinny dipping. It was profusely against house rules, but he whispered over strained asparagus he had wooed her the only way he knew how, and now they should take a walk back to his room, let him get lost in her long silver stream of hair. She winked quickly, rising. Side by Walker's side, push shuffle down the hall. Hall monitor nurse asks slyly where they think they are going. He snorts, "For a dip in the house pool," avoids eye contact. They are at his door, then behind it. He fingers the iPod his grandkids gave him at 80. Slowly, gracefully, she removes her turquoise butterfly beret, cascade of moonlight locks. He turns as she turns out the lone lamp. She whispers in the still panting darkness, "I love Miles Davis." Anthem. To love a country is a ponderous task. Tan arms spread wide to hold tight are never long enough, strong enough to keep for long the necessary touch. A nation's face with new brushed brows seems to say all the future is as bright as this crowd waving cloth, screaming what is lost must be replaced or not at all. A lover weeps but soon forgets the reason this pain of death was self-inflicted and quick must come again. Prayer. A father prays somehow his daughter or son can learn the nasty home rule lessons of homework life without failing an exam or two the way he had to. To say it otherwise, the prayer is often and always for himself, for his self. Somehow she or he or they will someday turn an eye askance on the ancient, recite a song taught long before in the murderous innocence of the sea, that for all the screw-ups, mistakes, missteps, there is some small wafer of forgiveness, maybe an unforced smile to attend. Dance with Yeats and Freud on the publishing of Live This. I blink against